I got rained on leaving from practice. Some of the internet just went out in the building here. And we're trying to do this by Zoom for the first time. So please bear with us as we struggle to get through this, but we're making it work. So appreciate Josh pushing all the right buttons over there, man. And Lapo, thanks for your patience. Okay. So we're going to
Mhm.
still continue with our Coors Light chill chat here. Um, what's your favorite TV show of all time?
Hmm. It's probably The West Wing, Aaron Sorkin's drama about
Yep.
the support staff of the president. I love his writing. I love it. It's something you could just keep watching and watching and watching. That'd be probably number one. Uh, yeah, that's probably it. Definitely.
I
West
still
Wing.
have stuff on my phone from when you were the OC here and I started working with the club that you recommended me to watch. I have
Yeah.
it in my notes
Uh,
file. So
Band of Brothers might be another one. The
best show
Stephen.
ever.
Yeah, yeah. So those
Yeah.
two are pretty dear to my heart.
Okay. So do you have a common catchphrase that you use as a coach that you find yourself saying over and over again, or some sort of message or, famous saying that you might use repeatedly?
Um, So I bet you ask some of the guys that I worked with, Wolotarski, or some of the older guys that are still on staff. I think they would say I say the term free and easy for us. And what that meant is our job as coordinators is to make things difficult for a defense, but make it as simple as possible for the offense. So I would always, try to come up with creative things, have simple ways to teach it to our players, but it made it look very difficult for the defense. So you would always hear me saying, "Hey, we're going to do it this way. We're going to do a far exchange here, but that's free and easy to us. We know what we're doing, but difficult for the defense." Or, the other term I used to use is we like to put lipstick on a pig, right? It's the same football play, but we're just dressing it up a different way.
Yeah, I love it. Um, okay, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to put you on the spot here, Lapo. Most talented Blue Bombers player you ever coached?
That's
I know
easy.
you.
Milt Stegall.
I was just going to say you share a studio with him now. You better be careful, right?
Well, you know what? I'm going to say this. He's the best player I've ever coached, Blue Bomber wise. Maybe the most talented is Mike Sellers. I was
Mm.
fortunate enough to coach Mike Sellers. Like from a talent perspective, like you don't see guys that big who can run with the ball and do other things. He was amazing. But Milt Stegall was the best football player I ever coached at the Bombers.
You mentioned Sellers. That was this part two of this question. Would he be the most underrated player then that you ever coached in Winnipeg?
You know what? I'm going to say the two names for the most underrated. Maybe Clarence Denmark never got as much appreciation as he deserved as I watched more film of him as a younger player. And I would say Matt Nichols. I
Oh
think
yeah,
from a league wide perspective, people don't give him enough credit for what he helped bring to the Bombers and how good a player he was.
yeah. He got hung with that game manager tag. I'm not sure he liked it, but in some quarterbacks, you see that as a compliment. I don't know, but how would you categorize game manager if
Yeah,
someone calls you that?
I think he thought it was funny at first, and then he didn't care.
Yeah,
Like he don't worry about the outside ones.
yeah. We're going to open up to questions from fans too later in the show, but just so they know now, right, Josh, if you put it into the queue there on our chat, and we'll get to you sooner or later in the show. I told you I've been doing this newspaper thing for too long. I can't believe I'm doing this right now with Lapo. Yeah, this is the part now, Paul. Paul, we're calling this part two. Lapo, the TV star. Um, One of the things that you've started, like I don't, I love what you do on TSN, right? You've become a real good analyst. You're doing sideline reporting now. I'm expecting you to be hosting Sports Center tonight too, probably the way you're doing so much stuff here. But one of the things you're doing right now that is really cool for me, I've been following this league for a long time, and I'm still learning an awful lot from just the stuff that you do. It's the coach's playbook on the YouTube page, and maybe you could on your YouTube page. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Lapo, and we'll make sure that we give this a plug throughout so that people will know to start to check it out. There's a segment right now on the Rough Rider defensive turnovers. You have plays of the week. You've got stuff about training camp, about how to put a playbook together. It's really educational. So maybe talk to me and the fans about how this thing got started.
Okay, I'll start with this. There's 579 followers I have. We're on YouTube right now. Very easy for them to watch this and follow my page. So I may just hang up if it doesn't go higher than 579. So please follow me at Coach Lapo. So for those who may not know, like 10 years ago when I worked in television before, they created a segment called the GMC. It was sponsored by GMC. It was Coach's Playbook with Paul LaPolice. So I would come on in pre-games, I would come on at halftime, and it was very much branded to teach something about the game. And the nice thing about TSN, they just said, hey, whatever you think is interesting, go ahead and talk about it. So I would do things like silent cadence. I would break down football plays. One time I was in Winnipeg and I used the North Winnipeg Nomads youth team to show football plays and then show Calgary running it. So I had a lot of creativity to go, let's break down inside the huddle, tell funny stories from what happened in the huddle. And those are all things that I've kept and put on the YouTube page. So it just allowed me, it's no different whether you're on television or you're a teacher in a classroom with players. I'm still teaching just a different way. When you teach on TV, you got 90 seconds to talk instead of 30 minutes in a team meeting. So I think last year what had happened is I think when Zach got hit by Pete Roberson, and like there was a lot of talk on right, wrong, you shouldn't do it to a quarterback, and I had some strong opinions on it, and I basically went to Twitter and I put it out there what my opinions were. I did a 3-minute video, and the response was really big, and I was like, geez, that's just like if I was on Coach's Playbook, I would have done the same thing. And you just kind of realize with the mediums, you can do it a different way. I see Darlene C just subscribed to me. Thank you, Darlene. That's really good. So you basically, I said, I should be able to possibly do this myself. So I kind of researched it a little bit, and I started, because we also don't have as many pregame shows as we used to. So I was like, how do I keep doing that? So I just started posting some Coaches Playbooks on YouTube. And I did from probably week 16 on through the Grey Cup. And then this offseason, one of my goals was to study this. And I spoke to a guy named JT O'Sullivan from the quarterback school. I'll give him a shout out. He has 400,000 followers, does a great job breaking down NFL play. And he actually played for the Riders for one season. So we spoke in the offseason, and he gave me some good advice. So I've done a bunch of things, whether it be getting better audio, better lighting, set up my office differently. Really tried to work on making sure when I started training camp, I was recording something, and anything I could teach the inside of the game, anything about. So this week I try to do 2 plays a week. I'll break down an offense or a defense twice a week. The Riders was last week, so I'll still try to get 2 more done. I tried to do the plays of the week. I tried to do some type of teaching. Last week I taught about 2-man coverage. So putting out information so fans, and the nice thing about it is, television, you have 90 seconds, where here I can speak for 11 minutes and educate people. And I put video up, and I use the video I have. I use my Winnipeg stuff. I have all the video. And the CFL is really good because they help me with whatever I need to get video. And so that's what it's been, and it's been a lot of fun. So like I said, please follow us. And there's just not enough CFL content out there, and we're trying to push to get more out.
That was the perfect time for a plug, because Winnipeg Sports Talk just came on with all their people. So all their people heard the plug. It's perfect.
Yeah. Subscribe to Lapo right now. Let's go. Let's get his numbers up there. Plus, if we didn't get them up there, he said he was going to disconnect the call and we'd be done here. So I appreciate that, Lapo. Look, the thing I like about the series that you're putting together is there'll be times as a reporter after a game when you ask a guy a question and he'll say, they were in cover 3 and blah, 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 and they ran this route. And like, honestly, I've been watching football for a long time. A lot of times my eyes just gloss over, right? Because it's almost a foreign language. And what you've done really effectively, I think, is that you're making it less of a foreign language to fans like me. And it is educational. And I think you found a real sweet spot with that, because as you said, I mean, there's a lot of people with CFL opinions out there, but not a lot of guys that are in the television business that are former head coaches in this league that can teach it. So, that's I think you've got something here, man. I hope it can really build for you.
Yeah, I mean, I do like. I obviously I love the game, and last year. So I mean, this offseason I have my own what's called DV Sport is what all the coaches use. It's a software that they use for the football breakdowns. Well, I have my own license this year, and I actually have all the video comes into me like I'm a coach. So I can just open it up like I did when I was the head coach or the offensive coordinator. I can watch the film, and that's something I was going to do anyways. So I may as well impart some knowledge where I can. So that's been fun. Now the editing part and uploading and recording, all that learning process has taken a while, but that's just part of the process you go through. But again, I always think of this is my job is always to, as a coach. I've been successful because I think I've always taught the why I'm asking you to do this, why you need this to be done. This is the way, and then if you can teach me a better why, I'm all on board. If you can find a different way to do this. So I can remember Weston Dressler, one of the best players I ever had. I used to be like, Dressler, I need you to make sure the Sam linebacker cannot expand to the hook. Find a way to, if you want to run through them, if you want to sit over, that's what the goal is. How you get there, find a way. So I think that's important as a teacher, right? You got to be able to teach things in a simplified, organized manner. And I'm just trying to do it on television now. So, and it's been nice. I saw some people on the weekend as I was doing sideline reporting that just said, "Hey, I really enjoy your stuff. I learned so much about the game from hearing the stuff you're putting out." So, yes, and I'm a sideline reporter. I'll be a sideline reporter on Sunday. So basically, I'm filling in for Matthew Sheehan, who's in doing a great job over in Europe doing the soccer. So I'm doing some color. I know I have 3 colors next month, which is color commentary. So I'll be in the booth. Along with when I'm on air. So yeah, it's nice to bounce around and do a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because the sideline reporting thing is new for you this year, I think, and you've been good at it. You did a game a couple weeks ago. You did the Bomber game for CGOB with Derek Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like? I mean, you're kind of bouncing all over. You've been in the studio, sideline, and doing the analyst part during a play-by-play. What's your favorite part of the TV of all those 3?
Yeah, so when we knew that Matthew Sheehan wasn't available, my name came up because 10 years ago, I used to do actually Coach's Playbook from the sidelines in Winnipeg. Anytime there was a Thursday night game where Winnipeg was the first game of the week, there used to be a lot of Thursday night Winnipeg games. They liked that on their schedule. My boss allowed me to stay in Winnipeg. We did Coach's Playbook from there, and I was on the sideline. And then that way I slept in my own bed, and then the next day I flew out to Toronto. And then also any Toronto game that was like the last game of the week, I would have done Coach's Playbook from the sideline there. So that kind of gave me an opportunity to already be on the sideline. I did that for 2 years. What I like best is at the stadium is best, whether it's sideline doing color. Color, you think about it. If you're a color commentator, I did 3 last year. You have 3 hours to impart knowledge. 3 hours. Now there's a structure. You got to follow. You got to. Your play-by-play guy, you can't cut him off. So you have to figure out how to work through that. But you're on the air. When you're in the studio, you're just like a fan. You come on for 8 minutes. There's a 2.5-minute talk where each guy gets 40 seconds to talk. And then you watch the game. And then at halftime, you come up and you have maybe 2.5 minutes to talk again. And then you watch the game again. And you do a sports center right after. So at the stadium, whether it be color or sideline, gives you an opportunity to do more. Like I thought our producer, John Hines, did a great job last week. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to come to you. Tell me about what's happening at the end of this, what you're seeing in the 4th quarter." And then 2 weeks ago, Chris Edwards, our producer, did the same thing with the Argos Elks game. We quickly broke down a play Edmonton was running and then talked about Toronto's next drive for a touchdown. And it's good to have somebody who's, maybe just seen things on the sideline as a coach more on the sideline. So it's been good.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, put your coach's hat on and tell us what you see through 4 weeks with the Bombers. I think a lot of people are surprised they're 0-4, lost their last 3 by a combined total of 9 points. But Paul LaPolice, the analyst, what do you see as what's hurting the team right now, or what they're not getting done?
Well, I mean, the hard part is they've turned the ball over more, and I don't say more, but they've lost the turnover margin more than they've had in previous years. And when you lose the turnover margin, you lose football games. No matter you get the best roster, the worst roster, that's going to happen. That's one thing. The other thing is they just haven't had a lot of explosive pass plays, and that's a big measure for me of success. When you've got your explosive pass game going, you should be putting touch points on the board, and they've just struggled in that area. And they've given up a bunch of big plays. So those are, big play ratio is an important thing. Don't give them up, and create them and protect the football. That's, I think, what has been hard for them. Now, when some people tell me, like, well, what changes you got to make over there? You got to make a bunch. Like what? Here's my point. They already made the changes. There's so many injuries at the D line, at the receiver position. Those are the changes have been made. They're playing those players, and there's not a lot of names you can go out and get, 10 guys that are going to be like able to help you right now. You got to play through it, and you got to get you got to play through that stuff. And I was watching on the sideline, looking at the numbers, going, "What's that cup? Oh, who's that kid again?" When they were in the end of the game and the no huddle situation, and I thought they did a really good job for a young group of receivers. The penalties came from the veteran O-lineman that happened in that last drive, but that was a great scoring drive, and then they lose in overtime, so they've lost close games. I trust that Osh, being with Osh for 4 years, he knows what he's doing. He'll keep a consistent message to them on what they have to do to win the game, what they have to do to improve in, and then they're just going to work at doing that.
Yeah, you've lived it too, Lapo. When you got lose guys to injuries. I mean, a coach is a teacher, but it's just different coaching a Dalton Schoen or a Kenny Lawler to make a subtle change in a route or whatever, to a guy that's just been here for a month and is learning the CFL game and hasn't really even mastered the waggle yet, right? Sometimes I think we take for granted how valuable experience is, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I would say, like, it's one thing to be a young player, but it's especially in the receiving position, and I'm okay with that. But like, you don't want them playing early. Like, sometimes say, well, because I've always been somebody like sooner or later you have to replace your receivers because you don't want to spend too much money on receivers. But like, you can play. You need them to go through training camp anyways. You need them to get as much reps. Sometimes these guys are just getting thrown in, and they're really young and they haven't been around. So. And here's what I always try to tell the players. If you know what you're doing and you run a 4.5, you run a 4.5. If you don't know what you're doing and you run a 4.5, you probably run a 4.7 because you can't play at your highest level. So that's what those guys, the veterans give you. They're going to give you everything, their abilities, their tools, but they don't worry about what coverage, what's my adjustment, where's the quarterback, so they can just focus on making play on the football. Or sometimes other guys are thinking about the waggle, all other things, and they lose sight on the simplest thing: look the ball in your hands, catch it.
Yeah, well, just one more on that. We'll wrap up on your take on the Bombers. I talked to Willie Jefferson after practice today, and I said, I hear it from friends. What's going on with the Bombers? I'm sure a guy like Willie, who can kind of stand out in a crowd, hears it everywhere he goes, right? And he said, just hang with us. We got good players. We're going to be okay. That becomes a tougher sell when you're 0-4. But, from a distance now, Lapo, you look at this roster, and I know they've got injuries, but, how much are you ready to press the panic button on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not. I just think they have to play through some of their injuries, and they got to play better football.
Right.
Doesn't matter, they lost to an Ottawa team. So they've lost to Montreal, who is obviously really good. They've lost to Calgary, right? Who's playing pretty good football. It's tough to beat Calgary in Calgary. They didn't play Ottawa, played better than them, and they lost the turnover margin to Ottawa. So,
yep.
Like, they've had some close losses. What's their other loss? What
BC.
Am I missing on?
Yeah,
and
BC.
They lost to BC, which is a really good football team. So, what I told Willie Jefferson the other day, or I told somebody the other day in my interviews, was like, the veterans on this team have to kind of educate the players like there's nothing wrong. They have to go perform better on the field. There's no mythical thing, but there might be some players in that organization, year 2, year 3, that have never been through this. And that's what I was telling some of the vets. It's like, listen, you guys have the understanding this is normal in the CFL. What you've been through the last 3 years is abnormal. It doesn't happen. Teams don't normally go the season with one loss at home like the Bombers have from 2019 on. So the players just have to understand this happens sometimes, but you got to play out of it, play through it.
Yeah, that's a good, honest take. Appreciate that, Lapo. So, just so remind people, we always give away a jersey on the show, and this week we have a Brady Oliveira jersey. I'll show it right here, and this is a double XL, but you can get the right size from the store. Josh, you jump in here. What do we?
Josh, how many followers we got watching?
We got 100 people watching live right now. 100 people.
And they're all going to subscribe to your show.
I can't hear him very well. What did he say? How many?
He said 100.
All right. I only got 500. I've only got 5 followers so far. So what's going on, people? Let's go.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Let's go.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we've
you're
got the
gonna have a
jersey
little bit of
giveaway.
an echo over there for a second, Ed. But yeah, we're gonna do our jersey giveaway, our episodic jersey giveaway. Thank you to Winnipeg Sports Talk for the raid. They sent their viewers over to hang out with us. So we got 100 people watching live. And I'll put Lapo's YouTube channel in the chat again. So make sure you go over there and check that out. And if you want to win the Oliveira jersey, you just got to type Oliveira in the chat, and a random winner will be selected. Oliveira in the chat, and also go subscribe to Lapo's YouTube channel. That may or may not increase your chances of winning the jersey, but it's worth a try.
Yeah, definitely will.
So while we're waiting and questions are going to roll in, we're just going to ask a few questions from the chat. We have had some roll in. And the first one is, what was your best or worst, up to you, fan experience you had in the CFL?
Fan experience. I mean, dealing with a fan, I guess. I'll say 2 things maybe. Like, I just go back when I first worked. Let's go back to when I started working for the Bombers. So in 2000, 2001, I worked for the Argos. And no offense to the Argos, but football in Toronto at that time was different than Winnipeg. And I just remember, so I get the job in 2002. I don't know much about the West. So I go out there, and just everything about Western Canada, like the Bombers organization, like football was so important. I just remember the first time I went to a Labor Day game and just sitting outside, like before the game, outside, I didn't have my gear on. So I was kind of incognito, and I just went out and watched the fans outside the stadium. I was just so amazed by that. So I always remember that. I was like, this is like SEC football, like how the passion everybody has for it. And then I would say a couple of times over my career, in 2009, 13th man penalty. I'm very notorious for being up in. People show me throwing my headset down in a struggle. And this is a funny fan experience. I don't know if these are my best. These are just funny stories. So we obviously lose the Grey Cup on the 13th man penalty. You're in a rut for the next couple of days. So I walk across, like, I just see Coach Miller one day. I'm like, I'm leaving, Coach. I don't know what I'm doing in the office. It was like a Tuesday or Wednesday after the Grey Cup. And I take my Nissan Ryder car. I had a Ryder car at the time. And I go and get a car wash because I hadn't had it washed in probably 8 months when I was during the season. So I go, and it's one of those ones where you get out and they clean it and it goes through, and then you come back to it. So I'm looking to get something else. I get something, a drink or something, and then my hand's on the table. And the woman behind the thing, she goes, "How are you today?" I'm like, "I'm fine, thank you." And then she puts her hand on the counter where my hand is. No, she puts her hand on my hand. She's like, "No, how are you today?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know who I am." And I remember after that 9 Grey Cup, the fans were still so positive. After that tough loss. And 2000, my time as a Winnipeg Blue Bomber head coach, taking the team to the Grey Cup was an awesome feeling, and being part of that, from worst to first, year 2, the Swagger Grill days, that was an awesome experience. That stadium was rocking. 9 straight sellouts or whatever we had, and that was pretty special. And and obviously when I was relieved, but the fans were very good to me. Like, didn't really want it to happen, so that was pretty cool. And then certainly everything around 19 surrounding, winning the Grey Cup and being part of that. So no, I feel like I'm the what was the baseball players? Billy Martin. I'm the Billy Martin of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, or the CFL. So I've coached 3 different times in that organization. That doesn't happen often. So no, I enjoyed my time.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. So we do have our winner, our jersey winner. So thanks everyone for entering and hanging out, of course. But today's winner is Kyle John. Kyle John, congratulations. You need to be able to come to the ticketing counter at Princess Auto Stadium, and your jersey will be ready for pickup by Friday. So congratulations, and thank you again to everybody. And we're going to end the jersey giveaway with another question, and then we will come back for more questions later. So if you have more questions, make sure to leave them in the chat. But Paul, Mike wants to know, why would an offensive or defensive coordinator prefer to be on the sideline versus up in the box?
Great question. So the primary reason an offensive or defensive coordinator wants to be on the sideline is to have a direct line of communication to your players. So it's sometimes harder to have communication. So if you want to have immediate feedback with the quarterback, if you want to look in his eyes, if maybe the quarterback's a little bit more settled because he can talk to you, or you can watch the film together, that's the primary reason a coordinator would be on the sideline. And there's a lot of merit to that. But there's a lot of merit being upstairs too, because it's a much more relaxed environment, to call it. You can see the game way better. So you can see exactly what happens immediately. So if you have a 9-play drive, you probably have had better understanding of what happened play to play, compared to being on the sideline. You can see 70% of it, and then you got to go back and look at the iPad, where I think when you're above from high, you can see it all. And this is a weird logistics thing, and as a coordinator, is you can have multiple sheets everywhere. Like I'm taped in, like I have multiple sheets. Like I have early calls of the game, and I have a list, and I go through and I write them off when I'm done calling. I have my play call sheet. I have another sheet that later in the game I start writing down. All right, next series, this is how I'm going to call this next series, and I have those sheets. So there's a little bit from a logistics workflow. It's a little bit easier to keep what you want to call in your head, and it's just a little bit calmer. And again, it's a good thing to be able to help with the review upstairs. I think that was a good thing. I could, as a veteran and a former head coach, I could be talking to Osh about instant replay, stuff like that. So I think that's the biggest difference. I prefer upstairs as a coordinator. That's kind of what I think is best, because you're a little bit more removed from people screaming and hollering and all that stuff.
It's funny. That was a real good question. Jordan Younger was asked about that last week, Lapo, and he said something that you just touched on, that when you've got a younger crew on defense, he's on the sidelines now. He wants to be able to look in the guy's eyes to see if there's comprehension to what he's telling them, right? You can tell when you're on the headset and talking to someone downstairs, it's different than you walk right up and do you understand what I'm saying? He just looks right in the eyes. And you mentioned that too. So that's an interesting take. Good question.
Yeah, and I think in 2016, when I came back, I was on the sideline for the first 4 games. Drew Willie was the starter, and I did for the first 2 games. And I just, you know what? Like I got Buck Pierce on the sideline. It's better off I'm upstairs. I can still pick up the phone. We still have the quarterback communication headset, so you can still talk to them. Younger quarterbacks, you may want to be on the sideline, but the veteran guys, they don't need you right next to them. They're going to watch the film. You have trust in the people you have down below. Let them do their job. Buck was great on the sideline, so he could calm everybody down. And I could just say, Buck, talk to the receivers about this, and I know it's going to be done.
Okay, let's move on to the next chunk of the show here. We do this every week now, kind of the road traveled, Lapo, just sort of how you got here. And you touched on this a little bit. You're a New Hampshire guy. You mentioned the Boston Celtics and the New York Jets, and growing up idolizing them. But you played college football at Plymouth State College, right, which is in New Hampshire. And then how did you get into coaching? Because I checked, and I think your first gig was the Maine Maritime Academy, right, in '93. How did you How did you go from playing to coaching?
So when I was a junior, I started out in business as a degree, and I don't think I wanted to be a business major. So I started out physical education and teaching. And I really enjoyed football and X's and O's, but you don't really understand the business of it. But I don't know how I got in my head, but as a junior in college, I started working football camps. My brother's roommate in college was at Boston College. He played at BU, but he was coaching under Tom Coughlin. And I kind of asked, I said, hey, you have like high school football camps. I heard that's a good way to meet people. Do you have any jobs? Like, I'll do whatever. And the guy's like, no, we don't do that. And then a couple of weeks later, he called me. He's like, you know what? The guy running the camp, he needs a gopher. I'm like, what is that? He's like, do whatever. And then when you're not helping him, you can go watch the receiver coach do his work. So I said, okay. So I did that for 2 different universities. And it was crazy. Tom Coughlin's walking around, and I was part of that group, and I got paid $300, and I was there for 5 days. And that got me just stuff for my resume. And then after my senior year, my 4th year, in the spring, I started applying for football jobs. I needed 1 more semester to graduate. So instead of doing it in the fall, I pushed it off to the spring, and I tried to get a coaching job for the fall. Maine Maritime Academy was in the same conference as Plymouth State. They had a receiver job. So I applied. I had a friend who had known the head coach, or my high school head coach knew him. So kind of helped me get the interview, went up there and was fortunate enough to get the job and had a great year. That person was named John Heward. After that season, he went to the Shreveport Pirates of the Canadian Football League. He was fired through training camp, but he had been a national champion at Acadia University. He had played in the CFL. So he'd been in a number of places. So then I just kept going on my coaching career. After that, I went to college in Connecticut, Western Connecticut State University, as a graduate assistant, where I made $420 a month. I made $4,200 a year on a 10-month contract. I had meals plus 18 credits. And then after that season, I was fortunate enough, there was a job opening in New Hampshire, which was called a restricted earnings football coach, which doubled my salary to $8,000 in over 10 months. And but it was an unbelievable experience. Great coaches. I worked with 7 guys who were full-time, paid to do it themselves. Most of those guys are major college or NFL people. Chip Kelly was the running back coach on that staff. I was the receiver coach. So I had a really good experience there 2 years. After that, I had the opportunity to go to RPI in upstate New York, which is a very good hockey school. People who know Joey Juneau, Adam Oates both went there, and had 3 really good years coaching there. And after that, it was John Heward got the head coaching job of the Toronto Argonauts and asked me to come be the quarterbacks, receivers coach. And I said, Coach, I don't know anything about CFL. He goes, no, you're a good young coach. You'll be fine. So I was 29 years old when I took the quarterbacks receivers job, or quarterbacks and running backs job at the Toronto Argonauts. I turned 30 in training camp. So very fortunate to get the in to go coach at that level.
And then I remember, I think the first time I met you was 2002 when you came to Winnipeg, right? And that wasn't an easy place to kind of parachute in. I mean, it was a very talented team, but it had just been to the Grey Cup, right? And there's a lot of pressure. People were talking about the Grey Cup drought back then. And, there was a team that had Milt Stegall and Kahari Jones and Charles Roberts. And so they wanted to score a lot. And then that first year, man, records galore, right? You got the Kahari threw for 46 touchdowns. Milt had 23 touchdowns. It's just crazy, the numbers. That must have been glorious for you.
Well, it's funny you say that, because there was no apprehension of taking that job. So first of all, I didn't have a job. So I worked the first year with the Argos. They fired everybody at the Argos. Pinball took over. Pinball retained me. So they fired everybody in football, but he said, you're a good young coach, give you another year. I had a second year. John Jenkins was our offensive coordinator. Gary Echeverry took over. And then he did not retain me. So I was talking to other people about jobs, and then I heard there was a coordinator job in Winnipeg. Probably 2 people helped me get that job. Paul Masadi called Dave Ritchie and spoke highly of me, and then Kerwin Bell, who, when Kahari took over, Kerwin Bell was released. We signed him in Toronto, so I worked with him for 2 years. You know, he and I kind of designed the system, or I listened to him design the system, and I learned it. And but Coach Ritchie valued Kerwin. Kerwin called him on behalf, said, "No, this guy's good. He's a good young coach." So I took the job because I didn't have a job. I was trying to get it, but it was funny. You're right, Ed. I never went like, "Oh my God, these guys were so good last year. What am I going to live up to that or whatever?" And, you know, I always talk about raising expectations, and I wanted to be the best offense in the league, but we were the best offense in one of the top Bomber offenses in history. So you got to always keep raising expectations. We broke 15 Bomber records that year. And yeah, Milt had 23 touchdowns, CFL record. Kahari threw 46 touchdowns. He had 29 picks, but he had 46 touchdowns. And Charles Roberts, Mike Sellers. We had a very talented football team. So it was kind of neat for my first year to go out there. And even the second year, we still went from first, I think, to fourth in scoring. You know, Kahari still threw a bunch of yards. We ran the ball well. We just weren't as talented that second year.
Yeah. You know, what's cool about your career coaching, Lapo, is that you mentioned that when you started in Toronto, and then you got to Winnipeg, and you know, the kind of experiencing Western Canada for the first time and the fandom here, but you coached in Saskatchewan, which has got crazy fans too. You've coached in Hamilton, which has got diehards. Coached in Ottawa, which is a market that, you know, they've got passionate fans there too. They've been very patient over the years too. I mean, you got to see this whole country. It's kind of wild now when I think of it. You know, as you said, you're 29 years old when you come up for the first time to Canada, and here we are all these years later, and you're still making a living in this league. That's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes, you pinch yourself because I was 29. The guy who hired me got fired halfway through the season. Normally everyone else gets fired, so I thank Pinball for giving me more time. And and then going to have some good years in Winnipeg was a lot of fun to work with Coach Ritchie and everything. And then I kind of been fortunate to go to other places. I went to Hamilton for 2 years, and then I got every couple of years I got kind of working with somebody who really taught me a lot, if that makes sense. Because when I came to the league, we ran base, like I learned from Kerwin Bell. Like we didn't really have a lot of experience on our staff. So then, I worked with John Jenkins year 2. Then I took his system, I made it my own, and that's what we did in Winnipeg in 02 and 03, and 04 in Hamilton. But then I got with Ken Austin in 06 with the Argos, and my learning of football grew enormously from working with him. And then I spent 2 years with Ken when he went to the Riders. And then I had 3 years as the OC of the Riders. And yes, every spot it's been good because I've got to learn and be re-energized. And certainly the Western Canada, going from 2007 to out to Saskatchewan, and then to the Bombers as the head coach. I spent 13 years in the West, so it was a really good experience. And, for me to live and work in television for 3 or 4 years, I was always figuring out new ways to get better. And that, I'll tell you, when I came back in 16, I was a way better coach than I left in 12 and 13. I was a way better coordinator. I had spent time with Scott Milanovic as a guest coach 2 years and learned a little bit of their system. I spent time in the U.S. hearing what they were doing from the tempo perspective, huddle stuff, and and all the creativity stuff. I always say this: those 4 years in Winnipeg with Buck, Marty, Kevin Burgoyne, Osh, that was a creative hotbed where Osh was great. Hey, what are you doing now? Hey, we're going to snap it through the quarterback's legs on a wedge and let the Darvin throw it to the. He let us do creative stuff, and that creativity, people still run it. Like I saw somebody before a game 2 weeks ago say, "Hey, a lot of your stuff, you're going to see a lot of." I was doing Sideline, one of the coaches. A lot of the stuff you used to do, you're going to see it this weekend. So you're proud of that stuff, and you're proud of that time being there with those guys.
When you're doing your coach's playbook on YouTube, and when you're on TV, I can still see the passion you have for this. And lots of people say being in TV is the closest thing to being a coach, but I get the sense that you still want to do the headset thing and lead a team. Where is that on the horizon for you, if at
Well,
all?
I would say this: I've always tried to live by this. I think I was always a good coordinator. Why? Because I cared about being a coordinator. And I can remember sitting in the bowels, right, of the Bomber Stadium, talking with Kyle and Osh as they're interviewing me for the coordinator job, and all they kept talking about is, hey, we're going to help you. You come here to the ROC when they were recruiting me to the OC in 16. You come here, and then we'll help you get a head job. And I kept saying to them, guys, I don't care. Like, I just want to be an OC again. I don't care about that. Like, if that comes about down the road, sure. But like, worry about the job you have. So I always think I've done that, whether I'm a position coach, a coordinator, or a head coach, and not worry about anything else. So, do I enjoy the television? Absolutely. Right. There's a lot of things that are great about it. I get to see the game. I get to watch the game. I get to impart knowledge like I normally do to players. It's just the fans now. There are certain advantages of this than coaching, but there's some great things I miss about coaching. The game day excitement, the calling of a football game, the camaraderie with the guys, working with them. But there's things you don't miss, like an 0-4 start, or injuries, positions you can't control, having not a lot of control of what happens, and certainly the time with family. One of the reasons I'm not coaching this year is because I just don't want to leave. I've never not left family. So my family, in Saskatchewan, we were starting our family, but my whole time in Winnipeg, I was always there. Our family moved here to Ottawa, but my family's not leaving Ottawa. They love it here. So am I going to leave in March or April, like a lot of coaches do, and be away from family for 8 months? I have 3 young kids, one in high school, one in junior high, one in 5th grade. So I'm just not sure about whether I want to do that. So maybe, every year will be different. We'll try to figure that out.
Yeah, I like how you're living in the moment with that, man. That's a good call because the job's stressful enough, and then when you have kids
Yeah.
and your wife, that's just you gotta some priorities that need to be balanced, right?
We should do a trivia question about my wife. That could be one of the questions.
Let's go. What is
Josh,
it?
go trivia in the comments. What is Tina? Let's just call her, but Tina Zabinski. What did she do with the Bombers? What was her
That's
role?
how you met. Yep.
How we met? How did we meet? So somebody put that in the comments. We'll see.
There you go. Lapo, you got this YouTube thing figured out, man. The comments section and subscribe and like, you got it figured out, man. Okay, well, that you talked about how when you came back in 2016 to work with Mike and work with Buck, and you mentioned Kevin Burgoyne and Marty Costello, those guys are all still here. That was a fun time. I remember being around you, and I got to see it from the other side, from this side now. Like you loved that run and that group. And then the way it culminates too, right? The longest road in Blue Bomber history. Let's just talk about 2016 and 19 with Winnipeg and because it seemed that you got a lot of joy out of those years. Maybe that's the best way for me to frame it.
Yeah, well, we won a lot of games, first of all, right? And not that we didn't in 02, but it was there's a couple of things to win the championship. When I've been in the organization on 2 different occasions, once as the head coach who took a team to the Grey Cup and we lost to a superior BC Lions team. But I believe I was the last head coach before Osh in 19 to take him to the Grey Cup. So to be part of that was awesome. But just there was somewhat of an re-energizing because I'd been out of it for a couple of years in television, and I'd been preparing the whole time. I'd be like, if I go back, this is what we're going to do. Hey, we're going to go tempo on 2nd and 1 after a first down. We're going to go tempo, and just sorting out all the different new ideas was exciting. The emergence of a quarterback was exciting. So it's not fun when you don't have a veteran quarterback or a guy who can play very well. The emergence of Matt Nichols made everything better for everybody in the building. And the facility itself, I was there when it was designed. I helped design the building, moving doors, moving offices, how we're going to build this. Never got to see it. I was released before the building was done. We played those games on the road. I was supposed to play 4 games on the road, and the stadium wasn't even ready. So, all those things I got to, and that facility is beautiful. It's a great facility for coaches. So that was an energizing thing. And then, Buck, Marty, Bob Wiley, Kevin Burgoyne, like those were guys I all knew. I knew Kyle. Kyle was on my first staff. He was my special teams coordinator. I brought Kyle to the CFL as a coach. And Osh was awesome to work with. So, that was just, the people were great. And then, like I said, like we were good enough offensively. I think we were 1 or 2 in categories throughout the course of the year to be able to give us breathing room to keep pushing the envelope and doing new things, trying stuff. Go travel to Purdue. Hey, how does Purdue run this? And then we put our stuff in. That was a lot of fun, and Osh gave us the creativity to do those things. And we had a lot of wins, so that made it a lot of fun, and certainly the fan base was good. And it's just tough when you lose some of those games, like 16 we lost in BC. That was a very tough loss. 17 we got swept. 18 we made it. We felt we could have beaten Calgary, but they just played better than us that day. So 19 was pretty special. From Streveler down to we destroyed Hamilton at 19. Like it wasn't even close. Offense, defense, special teams. So it was a really cool experience.
Just one more on that, Lapo, and then we'll get to wrap up with some more fan questions. Appreciate you hanging with us for so long here. That 2019 championship, obviously special for a lot of reasons. I had been working with the club since 2016, and what shocked me, it shouldn't have shocked me, but it maybe surprise is the better word. I was on the sidelines as the clock ticked down at the 2019. And there were people, because we're up by a lot, they're sobbing. There's longtime staffers that are so happy that the championship has come. There's people that I know they're bawling their eyes out with joy. And you go to interview people there's Andrew Harris holding the cup up, Jake Thomas, all those moments. But was there something for you that's all stuck in my head, but what stuck in your head from that day and at the end of it, when it was official that the drought was over?
So a couple of things on that. If you remember, it was in Calgary. Before the game, they actually did a feature on Montreal upsetting Saskatchewan with the 13th man penalty. Brian Williams was sitting in the booth I was about to be in before the game saying, and 10 years ago, Paul LaPolice was sitting right there. He's going to be sitting here tonight. So as the game went on, and we were beating them pretty good at halftime, both of those games, like 2009 and this game. So I went upstairs like, we are not, I'm focused, ready, because this is not happening again. Like the first, second, and one we had, we snapped it through Streveler's legs to Darvin. Darvin threw it to Streveler. Like I was firing all the bullets, if that makes sense, to make sure we're there. But I do remember, like at the end, all the defensive guys went out because they left to go down on the field, but I had the offense on, so I had to still call plays. I was like, oh, those guys are going down, like Danny Mack and everybody. So then after I called the next series, we were punting, and I said, Buck, I'm going down. Let's go see it. So I run down, and I come out on the field, and we're on offense again. So there's an interception, and the amazing things about all that is, one, like seeing Brad Foddy with how many years he's worked there, and he didn't have to see him holding up the Grey Cup. Just amazing, right? Just awesome to see. Guys worked hard at it and deserves a championship. And then my family were there. They'd been to a couple of those Grey Cups, been to winning. My kids hadn't been to a winning one. So for my daughter to be on, and son be on there and watching it and experiencing it and be in the locker room after was really pretty cool. And my brothers were both there. Just seeing how many fans were crying and everything. After when we flew home, the airport, how many people at the airport for us. The parade was amazing. How many people were there just thanking you. Yeah, it was pretty special thing. And the only thing I kind of feel bad about is, like, I literally went from, like that Tuesday, the parade, and then like 2 days later, I was flying to Edmonton to interview for the head job. And then I went to Ottawa for the head job. So I really wish I would have had more time to experience that instead of just jumping to the next, taking a job, but that's what happens sometimes. But yeah, just an awesome experience. And it was kind of cool in 20 to get the ring when I was still, I was here in Ottawa and we didn't play football. So you had a good off season to kind of relive the moments, kind of. So
Yeah.
pretty special.
It was a special time. Okay, well, we're going to get near the end here. We've got our winner for the jersey. We're going to take more questions from the fans. So our producer, Josh.
Did we get an answer? Josh, did we get an answer to what my wife did for the club?
Oh, we got a bunch of guesses. So I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, thanks for fans for hanging with us for so long here and through a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning, but I appreciate everybody that stuck with us because Lapo has been a good guest for us. So
yeah,
Josh,
so first we'll start with all the guesses for how they met at the Bombers. And so believe it or not, the first 5 guesses were cheerleader, head cheerleader. Then there was accounting, director of ticketing, physio, water girl, accountant, therapist, dance coordinator.
Okay, Lapo, reveal the answer here.
Coach of the Blue Lightning. So somebody got it, maybe the last one. There was a rule you could not date cheerleaders. We're not supposed to date players or coaches. But there was no rule about cheerleader coaches dating coaches. So I kind of snuck around that one right there. And yeah, so Tina and I met my second year, and she grew up as a Bomber fan. Her family always went to games. So yeah, so she, has enjoyed the journey very much. So also for my first time as a head coach was moving back to her hometown, if that makes sense. And then, we get to stay in the city for 10 years for the TV and then back to the Grey Cup. So that was pretty cool for her. And so good questions, good comments. We're up to, well, not bad. We're 601 subscribers. So I think we got 25 subscribers, but there's more than 25 people on. Let's go, people.
Yeah. Lapo, you're a good salesman.
That's pretty good. Our next question is, how often do you think about the 2009 Grey Cup? You kind of touched on that a little bit, but I guess we could expand it to how often do you think about games or moments like that?
It's a funny thing Milt Spiegel always says. He's like, you can remember everything, like stuff he did there. And I think what people don't have an understanding, or players certainly don't, is I was telling Milt this the other day, is, okay, so I still watch the 16, 17, 18, 19 or 17, 18, 19 cut-ups of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers offense. Why? If I go consult, like I did some consulting at 2 colleges this year where I went and talked football with them. And, here's our curl slide pass plays. Here's our 4 vertical pass plays. So you're watching all this film of these plays that you've called as a play caller over the years. Same thing when I left the Bombers and went to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. We watched the Bombers offensive, when you install your plays, my philosophy is to show it being done correctly, show it in the playbook, show video of it, and tell this is how it should look, this is how it should be run, and then your players go out and execute it. So you watch this stuff all the time, so you're always new to it. Now, 2009 Grey Cup, I have a hard time. I can watch it till we score. Like we score with 12 minutes left to go up like 17 or 18, whatever. We fake a speed sweep and we do quarterback draw, and Darian takes it in for a touchdown. I usually I can't watch it past that. So yeah, but I know it's on every year because somebody hits me on Twitter when it's on. Sports Center runs the clips, craziest Grey Cup games or whatever. So I always get somebody talking to me about it.
Fair enough. Our next question comes from Rob, and he says, Coach, who are you taking in the first round of fantasy, Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson?
Tyreek Hill. I like the quarter. I like the system better down there. Speed kills too. Speed.
Nice.
There you go.
And then Chad asks, would you ever consider coaching U Sport football? Does that interest you?
I'm actually, well, this is a big announcement. I'm coaching the Bell Warriors under-16 football team. So I'm coaching my son's tackle football team. So it's, 8th and 9th grade kids. So I'm coaching that this year, which is making me pretty angry because kids don't know anything, right? I'm trying to teach them, trying to keep it simple for them. But so I'm just kind of, I don't know. I've only had 6 practices, so I'm trying to feel out how to teach, not how to teach, what I can teach and how much I can teach. And I'm like, well, where's our alignment? Oh, they couldn't come tonight. I'm like, oh, it's just not what you're used to. Right? Oh, he had something going on. He's not here today. I'm like, well, why do I have 2 linemen? I can't practice with 2 on. So I'm doing that. I don't. To me, it's more about like who you're working with, where you're working with, how does it match with family. So the beauty of me is I think like I started out as a small college football coach. I played at Plymouth State College, small Division III school. I coached at small Division III schools. I coached at the 1AA scholarship level, but I never coached at Michigan, Penn State, any of those places. So the CFL is an amazing league, and it's been great to me. But at heart, I'm a small college football coach. I always think about, and that's why I think sometimes you can be successful as a small college coach. You got to do everything. So when you go to when I first came into the CFL, the staffs were small. When I worked for the Bombers in 02 and 03, I basically coached the entire offense by myself, right? Like our special teams coordinator coaches running backs. That was Daryl Sampson. But I coached the quarterbacks, receivers, and the running backs. And we had an O-line coach. Roger French and Don Smith were the 2. But they were both new to the CFL as coaches. And so I had to kind of train those 2 guys. So, my 2 years there, I was kind of doing it all. So that's what being a small college guy helps compared to somebody coming from the NFL or from Michigan. Where's my staff? Well, no, you are your staff. You don't have 5 guys helping. As Bob Wiley used to like to do, right?
Right. Lapo, we'll be tracking the Bell Warriors to see how they do this year, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question.
We're just going to end off here with one last question. And this fan wants to know, how much time as a staff do you spend preparing for the CFL draft? Can you shed a little bit of light about what goes into that?
Okay, great question. So what would happen in most staffs, and I can review kind of what Winnipeg would have done. Kyle Walters does a great job of, he'll target by position all the players in the draft. So then he'll go through with his staff and kind of go through and provide, okay, for every position coach, here's what you have to watch: these 6 receivers. You have to watch these 7 defensive backs. You have to watch these 10 offensive linemen. So they kind of create a ready list of, these are the guys we need information on. So then myself, I would have done everybody on offense. So I would have made sure let's say if there was 25 players in the draft that the position coaches were responsible for on offense or defense, as the offense coordinator, I would have made sure not only has the position coaches watched them all, I've watched them all too. You don't want to come to agreement. You just want to hear what everybody has to say about all of them. Then we rank them. Then we would have sat down with Kyle and Mike, and then kind of gone through and, hey, what'd you like? What didn't you like? You kind of just give your opinion to them, and then they're going to take that opinion and then start building their depth chart or their roster. That's kind of what you go. So you're going to watch 3 games on every player. So it's kind of something you do in the off season. You just come in one day when you're not in the office. You come in one day and you're doing football in the morning. You're doing draft in the afternoon. And so you just start early and you get caught up with all your film, and then you rank the players and go. And I felt very good one year. I think we were going into the 2019 draft. I was like, okay, the best player in the draft is Brady Oliveira. Like, don't take him. And we're picking high. And I was like, don't worry, just take him. He's the best player. And there was conversation, and that's what Kyle's job is. Well, I think we can get a lineman and Brady. I think he's still going to be there in the second round. I'm like, I get that. That's your world. I'm telling you, that's the best guy in the draft. He will come in. He will eventually start, replace Andrew, and he will be a great player. And but Kyle was right. He took Drew Delorier like at 4th or whatever it was, and we got Brady at like 11 or 12. So yeah, I felt good about that draft evaluation. I get him wrong too, but like I'll pump that one up.
Yeah, you nailed that one. Hey, well, listen, Lapo, we've kept you for a long time here today. Appreciate it very much. Listen, I really enjoy the Coach's Playbook, and I hope more people will go check it out and like your work on TSN too. And I got the feeling that you're going to be back coaching and down the road somewhere. So I appreciate you giving us so much time here today. You've always had a special connection with Blue Bomber fans. So thanks a ton for joining us this week.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody.
And remember, everybody, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock on the Blue Bombers YouTube page, don't forget to like and subscribe. Josh has given me the thumbs up. And also like and subscribe to Coach's Playbook. Ring the bell. Ring the bell.
Coach Lapo.
Thanks, everybody. See you next Tuesday at 3 o'clock.